June Klein-Bacon joined the Brain Injury Alliance of Iowa in October of 2013 as a Neuro Resource Facilitator in our Waterloo office. June provides neuro resource facilitation to Northeast, North Central, and Northwest Iowa to a 31-county region. She also serves as project manager coordinating deliverables on the Brain Injury Alliance of Iowa's Administration for Community Living contract, which is across the state of Iowa, including projects for concussion management protocols, case consultations, and technical assistance for programs serving individuals with multi-occurring conditions, including brain injury, mental health conditions, substance abuse disorders, and high-risk populations involved with the criminal justice system. June is involved at multiple tables for systems and public policy advocacy, including the Iowa Consumer Olmstead Task Force, Iowa Therapeutic Alternatives to Incarceration Coalition, Northeast Iowa Brain Injury Leadership Brain Injury Support Team, and County Social Services iStart Advisory Board. June graduated with a bachelor's degree in social work from Southwest Minnesota State University before moving back to the Cedar Valley. She joined the Brain Injury Alliance of Iowa with experience in mental health, intellectual and brain injury home and community-based services, disability services staff development, and options counseling and high-risk case management with the Department of Aging. Thank you all for participating today in this webinar, and I will go ahead and unmute June and let her get started. You there, June?
I am. Thank you, Annie. I appreciate that introduction. Sometimes it's hard to sit through those. So like Annie said, please feel free to type in questions throughout the session and let her know what questions you might have as we go through this. We'd love to have some discussion at the end. We have, at the Brain Injury Alliance, have had the pleasure of partnering and collaborating both within the state of Iowa as well as nationally to increase our ability to serve individuals impacted by the criminal justice system. We have had the ability to directly serve and provide case consultation with over 100 individuals with brain injuries, as well as their family members and professionals in the criminal justice system over the last 3 years through a contract that we've had, as well as provide training throughout the law enforcement system and other criminal justice professionals with over 350 to 400 professionals doing law enforcement, prison systems, probation and parole, reentry coordinators, and other therapeutic alternative programming in the criminal justice system. So it is a wide array of programming that we like to get in touch with and provide training and consultation in. So just a few things that I'd like to go over and make sure that we get covered today. We will do a brief review on brain injury. It looked like when we took a look at the registrations, we do have some folks that are brain injury professionals on board. So we do, because there are others that are in the criminal justice field on board with us this morning, we want to take some time just to define brain injury, review some of the characteristics of brain injury that do impact the criminal justice system. We'll take a few minutes to note some high risk, unique risks to officers and other employment opportunities out in the community with brain injury. Then we're also going to talk about just our services and the Brain Injury Alliance of Iowa. So just really quickly, just a high-level review for brain injury. When we talk about acquired brain injury, we really know that this is an umbrella term to capture non-traumatic and traumatic injuries. Brain injuries are not hereditary or degenerative and include incidences that occur after birth. As we communicate about brain injury, I think it's important to make note that not everybody with a brain injury or even with deficits caused by brain injury are cognizant that they have one for a variety of reasons. I share this, for example, in a screening exercise that we were able to complete at a residential site in the 1st Judicial District. We participated with 52 60% of them screened positive for a possible brain injury. And only one of those women walked into that screening exercise indicating that she felt like she had a brain injury. Most of them walked into that exercise indicating that they really felt like they didn't need to be screened. But 67% of them felt that, or 67% of them screened positive. So that's just one area or one thing to keep in mind as we talk about brain injury with this particular population, is that many of them don't necessarily raise their hand and say, yep, that happened to me, or I have a history of that, for a variety of reasons. Traumatic brain injury, of course, is caused by external force, acceleration to the brain, causing force to happen. Could be penetrating or non-penetrating injuries. And then concussion, one thing that we frequently find that folks don't think about is that concussion is a mild traumatic brain injury. So if we think about just the human brain, just very quickly, thinking about the biology, the brain is 2% of our body weight, but it does utilize 20% of our body's energy. And it does float in our inside of our skull, and it is floating in cerebral spinal fluid. So there is opportunity for the brain to collide against that skull in many opportunities, such as getting in car accidents, falls, those kinds of things. And we'll talk a little bit about that when we talk about traumatic brain injury here in a moment. So when we talk about non-traumatic brain injury, non-traumatic injuries can cause damage to the brain due to internal factors. So when we're talking to folks and asking them about history, examples such as lack of oxygen due to a heart attack, near drowning, suffocation, toxicity due to overdose or poisoning, that's one that not a lot of people think about, especially in the criminal justice field when we talk about substance abuse and the multi-occurring conditions and crossover with the substance abuse field. Tumors and stroke also. All of these can result in cellular death and a non-traumatic brain injury. When we think about traumatic brain injury, these injuries are caused by, again, the physical external force being applied to the head or neck, resulting in closed or open head injuries, as well as internal impacts to the brain. So examples might include, like I said, falls, which are actually the #1 cause of traumatic brain injuries, hits to the head, body, or neck that cause internal impact, motor vehicle accidents, penetrating injuries such as gunshot wounds. These are all considered traumatic brain injuries. If we look at the graphic that's up on the screen here, we also want to just be reminded, as I mentioned earlier, the brain is floating in cerebral fluid and is protected by our skull. And while our skull is an amazing thing, we also know that the makeup of our brain does not fare well when it comes into contact with the bony ridge structure of our skull. Impact that might include bouncing, twisting of our brain may cause shearing of axons and neurons in our brain from the force and cause injury and cellular death. So when we think about that, our brain cells control every function about us. It is important to understand that our brain cells behave differently than other cells in other parts of our body. And so when brain cells are damaged and functionality is lost, new brain cells coming on do not automatically pick up those functions. So one of the analogies I might use, for example, is skin cells. Skin cells, if we have a cut in our skin, for example, new skin cells coming on, we don't have to teach those skin cells how to be skin cells. They automatically know what to do. Brain cells, once we lose that functionality, without teaching those other cells and teaching strategies and compensatory strategies, and through rehabilitation activities, new cells don't automatically know how to pick up those lost functions. So once those connections in our brain experience cellular damage, it is irreparable. So we have to figure out what functions are lost, what's affected, and in some cases, what is lost long term. I did mention earlier, just this slide provides an opportunity for us to look at that bony structure, so that we can see how that those bones can affect the soft tissue of our brain when that comes into contact with a forceful hit, through a fall, through a motor vehicle accident, through a hit with an object or another person. Another piece to consider, in addition to either acceleration or deceleration, our brain is also subject to rotational forces across the layers of our brain. We have varying densities that are linked by long axons and neurons. And so those can also experience shifting and shearing when that force happens. And so we can also see injury occur with those forces as well. So there are also definitions around the continuum of severity with brain injury. However, it is imperative that we stress that the outcome is not always tied to the severity of injury. There are so many factors that play a role in recovery due to pre-injury status, post-injury response, efforts made in rehabilitation, as well as a variety of bio, psycho, socio, and economic factors. There are many examples in which the severity of the injury does not match the severity of outcome. I think this is important in terms of the group of folks that we're talking about today. My experience has been that many of these folks may be in a situation, whether it be because of socioeconomic factors. They may not, like I said, raise their hand and ask for help following an injury. Many of the women that I was able to do screening with, for example, expressed situations where they sustained concussions, self-reported concussions, to the extent of being knocked out or being left for multiple days unconscious, but they were unable to access medical attention due to it being an act of violence or domestic violence, an assault of some sort. So those are some factors to be cognizant of when we are working with these folks in terms of screening and thinking about, were they able to access and make effort in terms of rehabilitation or even address the initial injury. So when we think about the numbers and what we have going on in our community, the next couple slides just kind of address the numbers that are out there and what we have access to, how many brain injuries are happening in our communities. When we look at the data from the CDC, what we know is that every 13 seconds, someone is experiencing a brain injury in the United States. Again, we know that not all outcomes are the same. This particular data shows that in 1 year alone, traumatic brain injuries accounted for approximately 2.5 million emergency room visits, 282,000 hospitalizations, and 50,000 deaths across the United States. When we take a look at the data for Iowa, we know that there are approximately 95,000 individuals living with long-term disabilities as a result of a brain injury. This subset of Iowa's population experiences significant to severe outcomes, not just severe injury, but severe outcomes as a result of their brain injury. Now, if we want to flip over and talk about numbers that we are aware of in the criminal justice system, what we know is, or what we've discovered, is that brain injury screening is not systematic across the criminal justice system. The CDC reports show us that there are anywhere between 25 and 87% of individuals involved with the criminal justice system experience a brain injury prior to incarceration. For programs that have done research studies, similar to the work that we've had the opportunity to do with the Brain Injury Alliance and the Department of Public Health, those studies show that an average of 60% of individuals have experienced a brain injury prior to incarceration. So why do I mention this? On average, with this data, 6 out of 10 individuals that encounter the criminal justice system have sustained a brain injury. And because we know that brain injury is typically invisible, police officers, parole and probation, reentry officers may not be aware of that injury when they are working with that offender or that individual. So what we have done and what we have worked on is try to increase awareness of that information and increase the ability to provide tools in the tool belt of those professionals when working with individuals with brain injury and become more aware. Individuals that are in the criminal justice system are at higher risk to have brain injury, as opposed to approximately 8.5% of our general population that experiences brain injury. What we also know is that individuals in the community may be at higher risk for experiencing brain injury that we have historical information about, such as military personnel, former military personnel, veterans, former athletes, such as boxers or hockey players, football players. It's important that we take note, especially with some of these higher risk groups, that they may not be prone to asking for help or identifying themselves with having a problem or disability. They may not be as willing to share their concerns or even being assessed for medical support for their injuries in the first place. In addition, we see individuals with brain injury having a higher prevalence rate with mental illness and substance use disorders. We see higher prevalence rates with the homelessness population, kids coming out of foster care. We have also seen, for example, studies in Ohio that are showing us that individuals who experience one serious mental illness diagnosis and also experience a substance use disorder are also shown at a 72% risk rate to experience a brain injury as well. So we're just also seeing a lot of crossover, a lot of prevalence rates and correlations there. So we're working really hard to try to provide information across domains so that we can work together within our systems of care. I think it's worth noting that when we talk about the consequences of brain injury, that the challenges and deficits could easily describe challenges that many of the people in the criminal justice system encounter. It's not to say that everyone has a brain injury, but as we learn tools for interacting with individuals with different types of disabilities, different types of deficits, it becomes about person-centered awareness and what tools could we have in terms of identification, alternate approaches, and using resources to reduce and change the types of interactions that we have with people. So this slide, I've put in here, we do have the opportunity to do a variety of training with law enforcement specifically. And so we have had the opportunity to share with them some of the risks that they have. This also comes into play when we're talking with veterans or addressing some of our population that we serve with veterans with brain injury. So there's a video here that I have that I'm going to see if we can pull up. The video will show us an example of risk that our military as well as law enforcement officers may face when they are participating in tactical units. We want to share this information as a reminder to review that law enforcement, our veterans have also been put in a high-risk career situation when it comes to sustaining brain injury. Interactions with the community, as well as participating with those in custody that may become violent, may also lead to concussion or severe injury. Blast exposure is something that is a hazard in those tactical units that we are aware of as energy passes through the body created by the blast that can cause injury by causing the brain to rock within the skull as a result to, can rock within the skull and can also result as a result of overpressurized waves compressing air-filled organs. In addition, individuals present during a blast may experience secondary injuries, being hit by shrapnel, tertiary injuries when bodies impact another person or the ground, as well as issues around toxicity with inhaling substances. So what we know with our veterans coming back is that that is the one of the primary injuries with our veterans returning from the most recent conflicts in the Middle East. So I'm just going to try to show this video so that we can kind of see in slow motion what the waves coming off look like. So bear with me for a moment.
Footage from the explosive demo that I went to, and they're going to be blowing up 1 pound of tannerite, but rather than shoot it, they're going to use a blasting cap.
Okay, fire in a hole, fire in a hole, fire in a hole. 1, 2, 3. Kill me a different shot. Need some Bakersfield, what can I say? Hopefully you got the shot.
Now, if you look closely, even at 300 frames per second, you can see the shock wave coming off this 1 pound of tannerite. These shock waves travel at supersonic speeds, and if you're close enough and the explosion is large enough, they can seriously do some damage to your body, and is the most common cause of death among people who initially survive an explosion. Now, it's possible you may not even show any injuries, but that energy wave, that shock wave, passes right through your body and can cause something called a blast lung, and it's a severe pulmonary contusion where your lungs are ruptured, the vessels are ruptured, and you literally bleed to death internally. Now, these injuries may take hours or even days to present themselves, but if you're not...
Okay, so that was just some of the information or to provide you some example or visual of a blast injury or what that would look like in terms of the energy coming off. And like he was talking about, the blast lung that is experienced, that same effect happens in our brain. The same effect that happens with the organ with our brain, the lungs, the same thing that happens with the eardrum, that same thing is happening with our brain. And so we see that how common it can happen with that explosions that are happening in our conflicts in the Middle East, but also with tactical units with our law enforcement. So we'll go ahead and move on here. So many of you probably know that no two brain injuries are alike. We do have a brain behavior relationship handout that we can make available to you if that's something that you have interest in. If you're not a brain injury provider that you would like to have that information available, or if you are a provider and would think that would be helpful for you, we're happy to make that available to you. We're going to go through some of that information here. We would like for there to be just some understanding on how brain injury can affect how a person responds and interacts with the community. Functional effects of a brain injury can include physical responses, cognitive, emotional, and behavioral changes. So it's important to recognize that not every area of the brain may be impacted in an injury or impacted in the same way. So you have individuals that present with some or many challenges at varying degrees, and it is definitely a spectrum. Also understand that there is no way that we can cover all the intricacies of brain injury. So this is pretty simplified, but please feel free to ask questions when we get to the end, or feel free to email questions if you have questions at the end. And we're just going to go through and highlight a few of these as we move forward. So as we dive in, you can certainly see here, again, certainly simplified examples that you may encounter. And again, I have some videos here just so that we can spice it up a little bit. But someone may experience impaired language, stagger or slur their speech to the extent that the person may appear impaired when in fact they're not. I'm going to show a video here that demonstrates someone experiencing a form of aphasia. So I'll go ahead and pull that up here. All right.
Yeah. Sockies. You want me to what? What's that? Taking a video. What's that? Yeah. Taking a video, see? Yeah. So I can put it on Facebook so everybody can see you. You're doing okay? Okay. There's Christina. Oh.
So as you could see in that quick video from the woman's expressions, she clearly felt she was communicating her thoughts when what we could hear was not formed words. An individual's connectivity and communication with their body can be affected. So you may see someone that has challenges physically or experiences weaknesses. Sensory systems may also be impacted. So you may encounter someone that has sensitivity to light, sound, touch. And as you can imagine, in a general conversation with someone that may be sensitive to light, they may have difficulty speaking with you in a law enforcement situation, for example, if they have flashing lights, or if in the background there's flashing lights. They may have difficulty engaging. If there's bright fluorescent lights, that may be difficult. So it's important for us to be aware of those triggers, to work to reduce those triggers, minimize distractions, look for quiet locations to communicate, especially if people are have heightened anxiety, those kinds of things. So some additional, you may hear me say this a couple of times today, our brain controls everything about us. It tells us to lift our legs, our feet when we walk. It tells us to use our hands when we open a bottle, communicates our pain, how we manage and feel temperature. It tells us when we have to go to the bathroom or not. So if those areas of our brain are impacted by injury, so are those functions. Individuals with brain injury also may feel significant amounts of fatigue. And so when they're working to make connections in their brain again, recovery and inputting information into their brain is very tiring. I have a video with a man who shares how fatigue affects his life, and it's pretty significant. He talks about how even walking to the mailbox can make him tired, or getting up and taking a bath can make him feel tired. I'm going to go ahead and skip this video for this one, but he just indicates, you know, that there's no rhyme or reason to how his day can go, and he can't really track how how an activity is going to make him feel. There are some days that he can go for several hours and not feel tired, but like I said, that he might walk out to the mailbox and get his mail or take a shower and then need a nap, and may be very fatigued. So when we encounter those situations where somebody appears to be physically disabled, experiencing fatigue, having difficulty with processing information, when you're trying to communicate with them, it may be important for us to take things down a notch, simplify information, again, removing triggers, removing distractions when at all possible, and making things more clear and trying to speak more slowly when people are working very hard to concentrate on the information we might be trying to share. So cognitive impact, some individuals may experience cognitive impacts as a result of their brain injury. It's crucial that we recognize that someone with these types of impairments may look and talk just like anybody else that we pass. And sometimes in brief interactions, and again, this is often a discussion that I'm having with people in law enforcement or with folks that work, for example, in parole and probation. They may not have any indication that there are cognitive impairment or deficits. For some, it may be apparent within moments of starting conversation, especially if they are experiencing fatigue or anxiety. A person with cognitive deficits may be confused. Processing information may be more difficult. They may be easily distractible, along with a variety of other concerns. Law enforcement and probation and parole may have an opportunity to give extra time, or those of us that may be working through crisis intervention. If we have the opportunity to give extra time, build in extra time to process information, repeat information, ask the individual to repeat what they're understanding. Find out if they have the opportunity or ability to write down information or read information that we might provide. If it appears that memory might be a deficit, these are things that we might be able to do to help support a person that has cognitive impact if they're dealing with a crisis. Our frontal lobe has an area of the brain that I often tell folks that are in the criminal justice system or working in the criminal justice system that has our stop button or our filter. When this goes offline, this is where we might see folks experiencing issues around impulsivity, being inappropriate, stealing, being compulsive. With emotional responses, we may encounter someone that goes from 0 to 60 regarding their anger or other emotions, and we may have no idea what the trigger was. For others, it's a spectrum, and we may see individuals that give 0 emotional response when we think there should be one. I have a video here that provides an example of a couple's experience with a tumor in the frontal lobe that I found pretty interesting. So I'll pull that up here.
Cancer and raising 7 children, Becky Harper thought that she was going to call it quits on her husband. He was apparently putting her down. He was emotionally attacking her, and she said, enough is enough.
Well, Becky and Jerry Harper told Fox 4's Neha Curtis they found out something else was Jerry act out, something inside him they could not see. Neha's live in our Dallas newsroom. Tell us about it.
For years, a tumor was growing inside Jerry's brain, slowly pushing against his frontal lobe, the part of the brain that affects our personality and how we act. Becky says she didn't even recognize the man she married.
You want the Cavenders too?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Becky and Jerry Harper were on the verge of divorce after 18 years of marriage.
Like walking on eggshells, because you never knew what was going to set him off. And it was like, no, I'm not living this way.
No one had a clue what was behind Jerry's personality change, from someone who was kind and laid back to someone who snapped at anything.
I was getting more upset with the guys at work. You know, I'm usually pretty easygoing at work, and I was taking a lot of stuff out on them too.
Here, what you see is this area of whiteness.
Until one day when Jerry collapsed and doctors found out he had a non-cancerous brain tumor the size of a plum pressing against his frontal lobe.
The best analogy that you can draw to it is someone who's been at the bar a little bit too long and is a little bit free with their speech.
You just thought he was being a jerk.
Just pretty much, yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
One day, Jerry realized something wasn't right.
I mean, I have never laid a hand on her, and one time I raised my hand at her, and
That was not you.
no, that wasn't me.
This is where the tumor used to live, but as you see,
Dr. McGowan removed Jerry's tumor and things have gotten back to normal.
He has some memory problems that he doesn't like to admit to. He still snaps every once in a while.
Pretty much mellowed out. Have a lot better relationship with my wife. The kids don't upset me as easily as they used to. That hamburger meat's in the refrigerator.
But if Jerry hadn't collapsed and had that brain scan, they might have never known what was erratic behavior.
If there's changes and they're gradual and it's not, their normal personality, definitely get it checked out.
chronically criminal behavior.
Dr. McGowan says some people don't find out until it's too late and their lives spiral out of control, losing their families, jobs, and even ending up in jail.
I've got them right here.
As for the Harpers, they're back to normal. Jerry's making meatloaf for dinner.
Do the salt, pepper, and breadcrumbs.
So again, we're not necessarily asking you to be able to identify specifically where behavior or functional challenges may be coming from, but these challenges could describe many. If you're working in the criminal justice system, where those challenges might be coming from with offenders, for example. If you're working in the mental health system, it might be a question of or the substance use disorders system, whether or not it's a question of should we be screening for brain injury also, and working cross systems. So when we think about brain injury and we work as a community to try to connect these dots for folks, we're not necessarily, when we think about jail diversion or therapeutic alternatives, we're not necessarily trying to give people a free ride. I know I've heard that from folks in the criminal justice system before, but as partners, we've had a really neat opportunity to work together to address brain injury in the criminal justice system, to keep things moving forward in terms of prevention, and then reentry, getting people connected to programs that they may need to be connected to, and or strategies and strategy development to try to prevent and lower recidivism rates. So with emotional and behavioral impacts, while they're challenging, even in a non-threatening environment, some options that can be effective in the moment when folks have emotional impact issues may be to take a non-threatening stance. Be sure that we're verbalizing our intentions, repeating those, and providing time for processing. It has been key in working with some of those folks. Also, something that is very frontal lobe heavy. These are skills that develop in our late teens and early adulthood. At the Alliance, many of our calls often are a result of executive functioning deficits. When a person has these deficits, it can be harder to participate in life. And likely somebody is needing support or development and strategies to manage things like planning, follow through, organization, big picture thinking, making good judgment calls, controlling impulses. Injuries that impact executive functioning can have a long-term psychosocial outcome impact, including issues with maintaining employment, relationship capacity for living independently, quality of life, and increasing the possibility of becoming involved in the justice system. So these might be folks that you're working with, and might be what sometimes we refer to as our friendly faces or frequent flyers. They may be people that you can build a relationship with and make a connection with regarding historical brain injury, and make a different type of referral for support, or build a service plan that looks a little bit different if we take brain injury into account. It is important that we're aware that if brain injury is part of the bigger picture, that just giving a referral, handing out a phone number may not be the only solution. Sometimes if follow through is an issue, for example, without support with making that connection, that phone call may not happen. So I did just throw up a few examples of barriers that we have experienced during interactions in the community, specifically when we're working with folks that and have gotten feedback on individuals that are involved with criminal justice. For example, someone with attention deficits may have difficulty focusing on tasks and have difficulty responding to directions, and traditional approaches or communication may not be as effective. So again, helping remove distraction to gain focus and slowing down. Someone with memory deficits may have difficulty understanding or remembering rules and directions. So being careful not to provide multi-step directions. Don't assume that someone is going to remember you from a previous interaction, nor what you talked about, or the directions that you gave or the suggestions you gave in a previous interaction. Emotional control problems can certainly lead to incidents with others in the community, others in custody, or officers directly. Dysregulation of emotions is not always something that medication can fix. So if that area of the brain is dysregulated, it does take retraining and growth of another skill to manage it, and that's something to consider. Be aware that someone with a brain injury may present with a slowed response, and sometimes this can be viewed as uncooperative. So particularly speaking with in regards to police presence or other authoritative figures, I think it's okay to note that for many figures can cause a fight or flight response, and this response can be magnified. So we do just want to share that at the Brain Injury Alliance we've been able to share some of the barriers individuals can experience as a result of brain injury in the criminal justice system. We've been able to support through case consultation, through our neuro resource facilitation program, with family members, as well as directly with the individuals experienced brain injury, in order to support them in accessing community services and supports. We've been able to support professionals through opportunities to contact us and ask questions, get information, develop strategies, while individuals may be going through the system at different intercepts. In addition, we offer technical assistance to support organizations serving individuals and families to increase that service planning and success. So we've had a lot of opportunity to do some different things across the state through this program and through this contract with the Department of Public Health through our Administration on Community Living. So at this point, I would like to go ahead. That's kind of a brief overview on what we've had the opportunity to do, some of the lessons that we've been able to learn, and some of the things that we're able to share out in the community with law enforcement, as well as some of the probation and parole officers that we've been able to work with. I welcome any questions or discussion from those of you that are with us.
So we don't currently have any questions, but so if anybody does, feel free to go ahead and type them into the question box. And while you are doing that, just a reminder, like June said, to please reach out to the Brain Injury Alliance of Iowa if you're ever in need of brain injury resources or information. She described our Neuro Resource Facilitation Program and what that is able to do. We're able to connect individuals with brain injuries along with their loved ones and the professionals that are serving them to the needed supports and services in their community. So feel free to always reach out to us if you need additional support, like June said. I don't see any questions at this time. So if you guys do have any questions, feel free to email them to us or call us. June has the information up there on the screen. June, do you have anything else you'd like to say before we do wrap up?
No, I just appreciate this opportunity to share with you guys what we've been doing and a little bit of an overview of what we're sharing with the criminal justice folks, particularly law enforcement and some of the parole and probation officers, in an effort to share information across disciplines. So I just appreciate this opportunity. Thank you.
Well, and as you just said that, we had two questions come in, so I'll start with the first one. The first one says, what materials, videos, or modules do you use in training department or of correction facilities and the professionals that work with them? And then it's a two-part question. So it says that we work a lot with ex-offenders with brain injury and have taught the professionals to use the OSU screening tool and then provided some basic education on brain injury. She says, I am very curious as to what you use there and has it been effective?
Okay, I'm trying to process the question there. So in terms of what we have done for training, we have gone out and done training. What we just did in terms of just kind of a brain injury 101. I've done that, and then I've done, or we, I should say, because I certainly have not done it by myself. We've gone a little bit deeper in terms of brain injury training and talking about trauma-informed care a little bit with some folks in the judicial district, 6th judicial district, and we've also done some stuff in the 1st and 5th, just going a little bit deeper than just this lunch and learn setting, and giving the staff some training. We've also done some work with a couple of the prisons as well, and providing some training about brain injury. It's similar to what we did today, but just a lengthened version. In terms of screening, the OSU TBI ID is a great tool. We're actually looking at bringing Dr. Corrigan on board to look at how we might Iowanize that tool a little bit further. Through this project that we've had for the last 4 years, we've also used the HELPS screening tool. Is another option, and you're welcome to, I know I have my email up on the screen, but you're welcome to email the info@biaia.org email, and we can certainly get you a copy of the HELP screening tool. That's something that we've used, but the OSU TBI ID is a great screening tool, and we've utilized that as well. Not sure if I answered the question fully.
Yeah, and if anybody does have any additional questions, like she said, you can always reach out to us by calling or emailing. But the next question was just how is a referral made to the Neuro Resource Facilitation Program? And that is just made by either calling us or emailing us, letting us know that you have a client maybe you're wanting to brainstorm ideas on or troubleshoot solutions. As easy as that, or just reaching out to us that way. And then another question we have here is, let me read through it real quick. Okay, so in regards to getting a team of professionals kind of all on the same page, how do you get all the parties on the same page? Medical, criminal, neurology, etc. Often in our case, we get a court order for treatment but unable to locate the level of care in Iowa and only able to secure out-of-state care but unable to utilize the court order out of state. Do you have any feedback for that, June?
Sure. So I think that would provide an excellent opportunity to bring in a neuro resource facilitator for a case consultation or facilitation service. I should note that our facilitation services are phone based, but it is a free service, and we do regionalized services. So if you as the contact person or one of the contact people on the team would want to call into our intake number, which again is up on the screen, our intake specialist would do a quick intake, figure out where your team is located, and then assign the resource facilitator to the case, and then that person would be able to kind of talk through, like Annie said, what the options would be. We know that we have kind of some precarious situations. If the person is, for example, incarcerated for past 30 days, they lose their Medicaid, or their Medicaid is suspended. There's a variety of situations. If there's a court order, we certainly have to look at what that level of care is. But we certainly have a network of folks that we can help communicate through that case and try to provide you with some support. And that's something that's available with our team, and we can all work together on that. So feel free to contact us, and we can try to help with those individual cases.
Thanks, June. That is all the questions that we have right now. So please feel free, if you think of anything, to reach out to us after this. Thank you, June, for being with us today. And is there anything additional you want to say, or are you just ready to wrap up?
Oh, no, I'm ready to wrap up. I just appreciate everybody's attention, and feel free, like Amy said, to reach out if you have questions.
Thanks, June. I hope everybody has a good day.